You're going to die. Oh, spoilers. In The Last of Us, you're going to die. A lot. Sometimes it's going to be your fault as the player. And sometimes it's not. 95 on Metacritic. Let's talk about the good things first. Now, as someone who thought, despite its general acclaim, Uncharted 2 was a bit of a storytelling step backwards from how good Uncharted 1 was, I was a little bit worried, with all the hype, about the storytelling in The Last of Us. Because The Last of Us is trying to give you feelings. And it turns out the people who play games aren't very good at having feelings. Because having feelings about games is so unusual that somehow having feelings has been equated with greatness. The best games are the ones that make you feel and think. Now, a lot has been said about the opening of The Last of Us, which I've not included here. Let's pretend it wasn't due to a problem with my captured device. Let's pretend I wanted you to experience the opening of the game as intended. What you'll learn from the opening of The Last of Us is how good Naughty Dog are at dressing. The characters, the environments, the world. It's a wonderful place to explore. And there are times when you do get to explore it. But unfortunately there are also times where you're involved in combat. For a game that seems to be built entirely around avoiding enemies, it drops you in a number of firefights that you have to kill your way out. And it just becomes an exercise in frustration at that point, which can't help but detract from the rest of the game. The exploration is excellent. A lot of the time you're with a computer-controlled companion, and when you enter a shop or a building, an icon appears, and you can press a button to have a conversation between the two characters. And these conversations are genuinely interesting. Some are funny and some are sad, but they give a lot of depth to the characters. And those sequences where you are avoiding conflict and sneaking your way through dilapidated hotels and underground subway stations are very tense. When I was watching this footage back for editing, I noticed that I paused the game an awful lot. When I'd finished playing for a session, I was almost relieved to not be playing it anymore. Naughty Dog have created a brilliantly depressing world. It's not much fun to be in. It's a wonderful thing to experience. And in fact, the one game it reminds me most of is actually Siren Blood Curse. Swap America for Japan, the clickers for the Shibito, and the realistic for the bizarre, and you've got pretty much the same game. Well, what's curious is Siren Blood Curse wasn't as well received as The Last of Us has been. It can't just be because The Last of Us is developed from a Western studio. And it can't be anything to do with empathising with the protagonist, because Siren Blood Curse replaced its entire cast pretty much with Western equivalents. So it makes me wonder if it's the feelings again, because the same AI problems that plagued Siren Blood Curse unfortunately plagued The Last of Us. Enemy AI is frequently stupid, but occasionally too devious. Occasionally it knows you're right behind it, when before you've managed to sneak almost entirely in plain view. And your friendly AI doesn't disturb enemies. They can run and make as much noise as they want, but enemies don't react to them until enemies have reacted to you. Seeing your companions running around in front of enemies, it takes you out of it. And it's odd that such a highly polished game has these bizarre flaws. There are times when there's these small little vignettes you can walk past, and when you finish watching them, the characters just stand around. They don't disappear indoors as you'd expect. They just stand still, and you're supposed to move on and pretend nothing's happened. It's oddly strange in such an otherwise wonderful game, but it's been called a masterpiece. So maybe what happens at the end makes up for what happens in the middle, those combat bowls, that flawed AI. The first 5 hours of The Last of Us are excellent, but they're not perfect. If you enjoy storytelling and world building in games, this is a brilliant thing to play. But don't be surprised if it's not just the ending that has you in tears, but a final boss battle.